This episode of The Startup Life is brought to you by People Ready. Startup Nation, you have a lot on your plate. The last thing you need to stress about is finding quality staff or the available work you need to be successful. Save time and headache by working with a trusted staffing partner that meets your everyday needs. People Ready is a national staffing provider with over 600 locations across the country and 30 plus years of experience serving people just like you. They specialize in a variety of industries including retail, manufacturing, logistics, general cleaning, hospitality, construction, and more. People Ready understands that you're busy and on the go. That's where their mobile app, JobStack, comes in. Use the app to place orders or find work 24/7 or wherever you are. And as social distancing continues to change the way we interact with customers, colleagues, and our everyday lives, JobStack provides the ability to find the right temporary workers or work you need while eliminating the amount of physical touch points needed in the staffing process. Visit peopleready.com/startup life to learn more about how you can partner with People Ready. This episode is sponsored by Swanson Health. Startup Nation, Swanson Health has been producing quality vitamins and supplements, foods, healthy home, and self-care products for over 50 years. Since 1969, from the heart of America, Swanson Health carries over 20,000 wellness products at a great value. Pick up all of your favorite health products, plus discover new ones for your wellness routine, all while leaving money in your pocket. If you want to try any of Swanson Health's great products for yourself, use code STARTUP20 for 20% off at swanson.com. We have a link there in the show notes if you listen to the replay on the podcast.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation. So I hope you're ready to receive some value today. We got a superstar in the building today. We have Miss Kimberly Sumpter in the building today. What's going on, Kim?
Hi, Dominic. How are you today?
I cannot complain. Are you ready to pour some knowledge in the Startup Nation today?
Yes, I am. Absolutely.
All righty. As always, Startup Nation, my name is Dominic Lawson. This is the Startup Life Podcast, and it is powered by the Binge Podcast Network. So, Kim, first things first, let's set this party off right. Tell us about your path to entrepreneurship and just share your origin story with us if you would.
Okay, so it's a little bit entangled, lots of things that have gone on, but basically my main company is my candle company called Wax Kandy. And that actually, jumping into entrepreneurship was really not something that was planned. I am an avid candle lover. And back when I was living in Texas about maybe 10 years ago or so, there was a young lady who would visit the radio station. She would bring candles. They were great, loved them, always looked forward to her coming and bringing them. And then it had gotten to a point where she was really inconsistent with doing it. I couldn't contact her. And one thing led to another for me, I guess. I'm a very crafty person and I love to kind of explore with, crafts and things like that. So I just decided to go ahead and purchase my own candle making kit just to see what it would be like, because I wanted to have them on demand. I didn't want to pay a whole lot of money for candles, and I wanted to be able to have them when I wanted them and have them scented in the way that I wanted them to be scented. So anyway, I went ahead, purchased a candle making kit. And when I tell you, Dominic, after I created my first batch of candles, I don't know if they were perfect or not, they smelled so great to me. And it was more than just the candle making or the candle itself, the finished product. It was actually the process that I really got hooked to. So that's where it all started for me. And that was probably about 10 years ago. Fast forward to 2014. I didn't know that I was really in business until I went to a information session for a local organization here in my city, Jersey City, called Rising Tide Capital.
Right.
And someone had given me some information about it, told me you need to go and check them out because they had seen that I was, kind of making candles and selling them here and there to friends through social media. So they tipped me on to Rising Tide Capital, and that's where I really got focused and started to understand what business was about and that I actually was in business at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about Wax Candle and Rising Tide a little bit later in the show, Startup Nation. But I want to go back a little bit if I could, Kim. So I know that you're a Panther from Prairie View A&M.
Yes, I am. Yes, I went to Prairie View a long time ago. I'm not going to give you the year. You're not going to make me
no
go there. You're
worries.
going to have to research that. But yes, so I went to Prairie View A&M University back in the late 80s. I'll say that.
Gotcha.
My initial major was special education.
Okay.
And then I changed that major. I actually went with a friend of mine on campus. She knew the DJ at the school.
Okay.
And I visited with her to the radio station campus. And when I went inside and I saw everything that was inside, I was just, that was it for me. I was like in awe of everything, from the microphones to the reel-to-reels to, the whole watching him go live on air and, talk to people through the radio and all of that. All of that was just so fascinating to me. So that was really back in, I guess, about 88 or so, but I kind of left that there. And it wasn't until many years later that I actually went into the radio industry.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So when it comes to Prairie View A&M, was it a conscious choice to go to a HBCU, or was it just somewhere you just wanted to go and it just so happened to be a HBCU? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it was conscious.
Okay.
It definitely was. So at that time I was from New Jersey.
Gotcha.
And it was very important because education was important to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
My father had gone to an HBCU, and being in, most of the HBCUs are in the South.
Right.
So the older brother actually went to Prairie View first, and then we kind of traveled along after that. So when we visited the campus, the experience of going to an HBCU and seeing things like, like sororities and fraternities and all of those things were really important in the South. Like, not as much. I didn't see that much here, but in the South, it just meant so much. And it was the camaraderie of the students. The culture was just such a rich culture that I never had any real exposure to being here. At the time when I was in Jersey. So yes, for me, after visiting the campus with my family for my brother, it definitely was something that I wanted to do.
Got you. Thank you for sharing that. And so you move on from college and you go on to have quite a really awesome radio career. I see that, you were in Killeen, Texas, where you had the #1 midday show in Central Texas for 2 years straight. And then you went from there to the Dallas market, I believe, the #141 market to the #5 market. So talk about, once at one point in time being the queen of Central Texas airways, right?
Well,
and then going
yes.
to a big market like Dallas. Talk about that transition.
Okay, so I had a wonderful opportunity. Initially, when I started out, my very first radio program was in Texas, at Texas Southern University. Okay. So that was where I got the foundation a little bit with being on air. And then after that, when I was visiting a relative who lived in Killeen, Texas, there was a radio station there that I checked out, and I got a job there, and I wound up staying there. And it was one of the best experiences. And even though it was a very small market, it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot of things that I would carry with me to a larger market. And I think when I was in Texas, most of the stations that were there were not a lot of R&B stations. The closest station to us with R&B was in Austin. So for me, I really didn't have that major competition with the midday, I would say, because a lot of the stations were country. So,
Gotcha.
and the hot thing on I would say probably in Killeen with the military and all of that was, the R&B, the soul music, the rap, and hip hop and all of that.
Mhm.
So that experience was great. But anyway, I started seeking out other opportunities in larger markets, and I felt that it was time for me to move on and to expand and at least try. And it always takes that one person to give you an opportunity for those things to happen. And that's what happened to me. I sent out my air check tape and I got a call back from a program director in Dallas, Texas. And a couple of months later, I was moving to Dallas. And that's where the big stuff really started for me. It was really great.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And Startup Nation, what I hear in that answer is that when she was in the small market, she really dove in and really took the opportunity to learn as much as she could to where she could go on into the major market. And Kim, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of times, whether we're trying to scale the corporate ladder or dive into our path of entrepreneurship, I think some of us get, lost and like, oh, it's got to be this big splash and this, that, and the other. But I appreciate you sharing that you took the time to learn, scale the ladder, learn the ropes and everything else, because professional development is really important on this.
Right.
So I appreciate you sharing that.
Right. And then you get an opportunity to learn, make mistakes, to test and try different things out. And that really, to me, was the core, the foundation of everything that happened for me later on when I was able to move to a larger market. Because without that, I would not have been able to do a lot of things. And I had a program director who, because we were a very small station and we were very competitive in the city that we were in, there were things that I was able to bring with me that I would not have necessarily had the opportunity to learn in a larger market. Once you get there, they expect you to hit the ground running. So with me having that great foundation, I was able to kind of do that when I got into a bigger market in Dallas, Texas.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that for sure. So look, we have our HBCU roots, and then a very esteemed career in radio, and all this culminating to an amazing podcast, Startup Nation. Kimberly is the host of the Sistahs Connect podcast that celebrates the spirit of sisterhood and encourages women of color to connect. So Kim, this started from what I see, a concept that began from an online forum in 2004. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So when I was in Dallas, I was at KRNB-FM. I was new to the city after I'd left Killeen, and I was working an overnight shift. And it was pretty tough for me to really get connected with the women in the city. I wanted to find a way just to kind of see what was going on there and kind of, build a little bit of a camaraderie with the women, the listeners who were listening in my small time slot.
Right.
So I thought about, creating this online forum. Sistahs Connect was an opportunity for me to, it was just basically telling stories, pretty much similar to what I do now with the podcast, but telling stories of women in the community, bridging the gap in ways where I created small lifestyle events at that time that were connected to the website as well. So what I basically did was I took the website and I brought it to life with events. Yeah. And the whole purpose of it was for me to have an opportunity to connect with the women who were in Dallas, Texas at that time. I let it go dormant for a little while after because, life happens. I moved on and, and all of that. And it was just something that was burning in me. Even 10 years later, it was burning in me to continue it. And then I want to say maybe about 2 years ago or so, I had a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur who was telling me that, with my candle company, you may want to try to find ways to create some type of content for your customer outside of the candle making. And is there anything that you can do that, your core audience or your demographic or the people who are already buying from you can connect to? And Sistahs Connect was right there. So the timing was perfect, for all of that to happen. So that's where that all came to be. So it initially started with a Facebook group.
Okay.
And the Facebook group grew very, very quickly. So I started that group in, I want to say maybe the last week in January.
Okay.
And within 3 months, I had already had 1,000 followers within the group. And it was a private group, small group. So it was really building and growing. And then it was like a light bulb, Dominic,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, okay, why don't I take my experience with radio, my love for podcasting, because I am an avid podcast listener, and create a podcast and take all of this content within this group and now turn it into a podcast? And then that's how the podcast came about.
Don't you just love when a plan comes together?
Yes. And it was all, I think, by accident, but then again, it really wasn't by
Right.
accident. Everything came together when it was supposed to. It was all, building to the master plan when I didn't even realize that that was what was supposed to happen.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I appreciate you, touting and sharing with Startup Nation the power of content marketing and creating content. Your story actually reminds me of this guy who got the same advice from the person that you got this advice from when he talks about how he was selling insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And he got the advice of starting a podcast. You can talk about anything, just sell insurance on the podcast. And it was a wrestling podcast. So you think about insurance, professional wrestling, two different things. And the podcast did so well that he stopped selling insurance and just did the podcast.
Yeah. Yes. Isn't that something? And the podcast here, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Because people want information. They want to be entertained. They want to be connected. They want to be informed. They want to be educated. And a podcast is one of the most perfect mediums for you to be able to do that. And it's quick. It's kind of like, I kind of consider my podcast inspiration on the go. You don't have to read. You can plug in your earbuds and you can keep it moving, on the trip to the grocery store. And that with your podcast, it's something that, so many more people, I think, would be able or willing to consume because it's so quick and it's so easy.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. So let's go back to January 20th, the launch day for Sistahs Connect, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about the preparation leading up to that day. Were you nervous? Did you know you had this? Tell me about the prep and the actual launch day of Sistahs Connect.
You know what? I was nervous. I started doing a lot of research, probably a little bit more than a year prior to me launching the podcast. Now going back just a little bit, I actually was an avid listener to talk radio. I love talk radio. So I think that was something that is the reason why the podcast, I've always loved podcasts. I've always loved hearing an exchange of conversation with people. But January 20th was an important day for me. A month prior to that, my fiance's mom had passed away. I had initially wanted to start the podcast and launch it on my birthday, which is December 28th.
Gotcha.
After we were dealing with her illness and her death and all of that, I kind of put it on hold. But then I decided to go ahead and move forward with it because in the process of dealing with her death, it made me understand and realize that we need to do things now.
I hear that.
You need to, if there's something that's really burning inside of you and something that you feel you need to do, you need to do it. So the 20th of January actually was a year to the day that I started the Facebook group. So that's why I selected that day. I went through podcasts about podcasting are still my favorites. I'm like really bad junkie with that. I read lots of articles. I listened to podcasts. I listened to all types of podcasts, not necessarily podcasts in the realm of women's empowerment. And I really didn't want to do that and listen to that type of podcast because I wanted my thoughts to be my own and I wanted to be as original as I could be.
I hear that.
but I wanted to listen to good contents with hosts that were having great conversations and, interviewed guests that were seamlessly done and things like that. So that's what I was really researching. So about a year or so, it took me to finally get all that. And then finally, I got my hosting account ready. I had my website already. I had all of those things done. And it was just a matter of recording my first episode, which was with one of my very close friends. And we sat down in her basement. We recorded it. I edited the podcast. And the day that I launched that podcast, Dominic, it was crazy. It was, I can't even, it is so, and I'm smiling now. I was so proud of myself and I was so excited about it. And I was so excited that I was my first download because I downloaded every app there was.
I hear that.
And went on my phone and started downloading and said, yes, I have a listener. But anyway, by default, which was me, but still. But I was really excited about that. And after the first episode launched, then everything else was just, it was just easy. So I absolutely am passionate and love podcasting and telling stories of the women that I admire so much.
Absolutely. And Startup Nation, if you're interested in listening to Sistahs Connect podcast with Kimberly Sumpter, we have a link in the show notes for easy access for you to go ahead, check out her podcast. And hey, while you're at it, leave her a 5-star review since you're listening there. So I appreciate you sharing that, Kim, for sure.
Thank you.
No worries. So let me ask you this, what's the one thing since you've launched a Sistahs Connect podcast, what's the one thing that's happened that you didn't expect before you launched the show?
Before I launched the show, what is the one thing that I did not expect to happen before I launched it? I, to be honest, I did not think that I was going to have a lot of followers.
Okay.
I wasn't really sure. So I had already settled in my mind that if I launch this podcast out and only myself and my friends are listening, then I'm good with that. So
Gotcha.
I kept my expectations really low. Mm-hmm. So I was really very surprised at the response that I would get thereafter, and the support that women were giving me and that they were ready to hear this content. So that was really surprising to me. Even though I did have the Facebook group,
right.
It's still, when things actually happen, when people are listening or responding to it, it is a little bit of a surprise, a little bit, because you really don't know what to expect once you finally kind of dip in there and do it.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. What's your ultimate goal with the show, Kim?
My ultimate goal is to continue to tell stories, primarily of African American women, and have the thread be the thread of something positive, be the thread of promoting friendships. That is very important to me. That's really another reason why I started the podcast as well, because it's really a dedication of the women that I admire and who have inspired me personally and professionally.
Okay.
The large majority of the women that I actually talk to are my close personal friends. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of expand my friendships with other women, because I never understood why there was ever so much drama in friendships. I've always had really amazing friends, and beautiful friendships. And there are lots of women who don't have that. And I just wanted to share that and show them what that looks like. So I want to keep that conversation going. And I want people to feel when they hear it, that they're either connected with someone's story, because we're all connected in some kind of way. We're not all that different. Absolutely. And I just want to keep that message out there that we are all the same. We come from the same cloth, and that we need to be open to listening to and hearing other people's stories, and maybe then we'll get along a little bit better. So even if it's from one person to the next, and it doesn't have to be a worldwide thing or a big thing that I'm trying to do, but if it really does touch one person and it does make a difference in another woman's life, then that is my goal.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. How you like being on the Startup Life podcast so far, Kim?
I love it. Love it. You're a great host.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Startup Nation. Give me just a second so I'll let my editor do his thing. Thank you so much. This is great content, by the way.
Oh, good. I was a little nervous because I was listening to your other guests and I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can come with all that.
Oh, no. I tell people all the time, if I don't set you up for success, then as a host, I haven't done my job properly.
Okay. You're doing awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so are you. So let's see. You ready to get back into it?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, Startup Nation. So let's continue. So Kim, if you would, why call the business, your candle company, Wax Kandy Candle Company? Why that name?
You know, it's funny. I am a big play on words kind of girl. Okay. I love a play on words. And initially, when I started the candle company, I love sweet things. I love things that smell sweet. I love things that smell like foods and cakes and all kinds of crazy things like that. And I think in my mind, I wanted to do something that was fun, and I wanted you to be able to remember the name of the company. I didn't want it to be boring. I thought that Wax Kandy was a little bit fun and a little bit clever, so that's why I named it that.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Startup Nation, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. This episode of The Startup Life is tucked in nice and tight by Philip Stein and the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet. Startup Nation, getting quality sleep is super important, especially for those of us as entrepreneurs. I know for me, if I don't get enough quality sleep, not only do I not perform well while working in my business or exercising, but also it really affects my mental health, and that doubt starts to creep in. And that's the last thing we want as entrepreneurs. Also, with everything going on, good quality sleep is important to repair the body and support a good immune system. And that is why, Startup Nation, I wear the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet. The Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet uses natural frequency technology to reinforce our biomagnetic field to improve deep sleep, length of sleep, and overall sleep quality. This helps produce a healthier heart, regulate weight control, and help strengthen the immune system, which helps destroy bacteria and viruses. Right now, when you go to philipstein.com, use code SLEEPEZ and you will get 10% off the entire store. That's promo code SLEEP, capital E, capital Z. So if you are ready to be more productive in leading your business, go with the Philip Stein Sleep Bracelet, proven to be natural and safe to give you a better, deeper sleep. This episode of The Startup Life is brought to you by the Risk Management Society. Startup Nation, the Risk Management Society, or RIMS, is a global organization dedicated to the profession of risk management. For nearly 60 years, RIMS has delivered the latest strategies and resources that allow risk professionals to grow, innovate, and succeed in any business. RIMS works with industry leaders to produce content and online training that business professionals turn to. Topics include business continuity, cyber risk, risk management techniques, the fundamentals of insurance, and more. There is also a private members-only site where people can discuss sensitive issues and get honest answers. Members have been leaning on each other as we all navigate this global pandemic. If you're concerned about the safety of your employees and the sustainability of your organization, you need the resources and connections RIMS provides. Learn more at go.rims.org/startup life. If you're listening to the replay on the podcast, we have a link there in the show notes. You can save 25% off a year-long membership. So if you're ready to get the resources and strategies you need to manage risk, go with RIMS and join their global network of over 10,000 members across more than 60 countries. Support for The Startup Life is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Startup Nation, personal grooming is super important, not only from a hygiene standpoint, but also from a confidence one as well. And that is why you need to have a tight haircut and, well, a nice groomed undercarriage as well. And when doing that, you don't want to use the same razor, do you? That's just absurd. And this is why our friends at Manscaped have given you another option. Introducing the all-new Lawnmower 3.0 by Manscaped. This lightweight and waterproof razor features precision engineered blades for safe trimming in sensitive areas, and a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. Ladies, Father's Day is just around the corner, and this will make a perfect gift for that guy on the go. Use code The Startup Life in all caps for 20% off and free shipping on your brand new Lawnmower 3.0 at manscaped.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. And while you're there, be sure to check out all the other products from manscaped.com as well. So for proper manscaping without the fear of hurting anything, go with Manscaped. Trust me, your family of jewels will thank you. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. So, I know you have like workshops and private events. Tell us a little bit about those and what kind of goes into planning those.
Okay, so yes, I have candle making workshops. I have a space in Kearney, New Jersey that I share with two other creative entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And we all have handmade classes. I love selling candles, creating candles, making them, selling them online, all of that, and at pop-ups, all that. But it's something about having people physically in the space with you creating candles as well. And because for me, I love the process so much, I really wanted to share that. So basically the parties are actually, they can be as intimate as 3 or 4 people to as big as 40 people. I have the space to accommodate that. And they are coming in, men and women, both are coming in. I am giving them the basics, the 101 of candle making, everything down to the safety aspect, to the history of candles, to, the scents that they have an opportunity to select from, giving them a little bit of background information on essential oils and things like that. And I pretty much, for the most part, I do the workshops myself. I have my routine. I have everything, my systems in place where I'm able to set up for the parties. It's pretty easy. But what I get most out of it is watching the reaction of people when they feel like they've completed and created something on their own, and that they're really experiencing what the process is really like. And I also like the opportunity of having people from different places who don't necessarily know each other have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation. We have music, we have light bites, the candle making, all of that. But it also gives people an opportunity to sit down and chat.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate you. I appreciate that answer, because I think a lot of times when we have a business and stuff like that, a lot of times people only think that we're selling just the service or the product itself. But what you're also selling, Kim, and Startup Nation, make sure you get this. What Kim is also selling is the experience, the conversations, the ambiance of it all. So I appreciate that answer so much.
And it's given me an opportunity to intertwine the podcast with the candle making. So that was another thing, the majority of the people that come to my candle making workshops are women, and they are within, my core audience, or who are already listening to the podcast. Right. So what I do is I can kind of introduce the podcast within the candle making workshops. It can be a source of conversation, something that we can kind of riff about and get deeper into if they listen to an episode. And it also gives me an opportunity to teach people about, or to educate them on what a podcast really is, because a lot of people don't know. For as many people as there are out there who listen to podcasts, there are lots of people who don't. And I find that the women who are within my Facebook group, a lot of the women who actually come to my events are not podcast listeners. So I'm actually converting customers into podcast listeners, and I'm educating them at the same time. So I'm killing a lot of birds with one stone.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Kim, I got to ask you something. If I know, if I'm overstepping, please don't spill the secret sauce. But when I like see people like making candles and stuff like that, like especially when they're first starting, a lot of times when we're smelling them, it's like the scent is a little bit too strong, whether it's like lavender or cookie smells or whatever the case may be. So I guess I'm curious, how do you find that sweet spot of like it smells just right and it's not too strong and stuff like that?
Well, it depends. So now the great thing about the parties is that I give the person an opportunity to make it as strong as they'd like to, or as so that's another nice draw, so they can actually customize their own experience in making their candle. But I think as far as just in general, let's say I'm making candles to sell at a craft fair or on the website.
Right.
Typically, if you are a person who really likes candles, first of all, adding a description of what that would smell like as much as you can helps people to make a decision on whether or not this is something that they may want to purchase. But if you are an avid candle lover and you like lavender, you pretty much know that the strength of lavender is going to be stronger than it would be if you were purchasing maybe a vanilla. But what I try to do is to add descriptions to give people the best way possible without having to smell a candle if they're purchasing it online, to be able to know what it might smell like. But to be honest, Dominic, a lot of people really like to be able to smell candles, and they want a strong smelling candle. But in the case that you don't, I always customize it for you. You can just give me a call, let me know I want something on the lighter side, and I got you covered.
Gotcha. Maybe that's just me and my sensitive nose. So fair enough.
Yeah, there are people who love them and people who don't. And it's true. There are, and something which really gave me an idea and something that I thought about. A lot of people like candles for the ambiance, not necessarily the scent.
Fair enough.
So I'm thinking about adding a line of unscented candles to Wax Kandy as well, because they just like the way that they look. They don't necessarily want anything scented. And I found that too, which I found very odd because I thought everybody in the entire world loved a strong candle, but I guess not. So I'm learning that.
Gotcha. Like I said, some of us with weak noses, so it's just kind of, I don't know. It is what it is. But Startup Nation, if you want to, if you find yourself in the Jersey area and you want to attend one of those private events or workshops, we have the link to waxkandy.com. We have the link there in the show notes for easy access. And go on there and check out our website as well while you're there. So I want to ask you this. Well, more importantly, I want to share something with you, Kim, if I could. So, you have your hosting site on Libsyn and stuff like that. So do I here at the Startup Life podcast. And so I'm logging in one day, right? And I was like, all right, log in, do this, that, and the other. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. Who is that? Like, that's my homegirl. That's Kimberly right there, right? So, like, when you saw that on the Libsyn, the first page of the website, what were your experiences? Tell me what that experience was like.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, I will tell you that they did send me an email a couple of months prior to ask me. Okay. But in a way that they said that they would be interested, or they would really like to feature me as one of the podcasters, indie podcasters on the website. Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, like then I was going crazy. But they didn't tell me how it was going to be integrated or how I would be integrated into the website. I thought it was going to be in the form of a blog. I had to answer a lot of questions, all of that. But when I saw that on the front page, I nearly passed out. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. All I kept saying to myself was, I started my podcast in January. There are over 67,000 podcasters within the Libsyn community, and I am one of the ones that they selected. And I can't there are no words. I can't even begin to tell you, to be honest with you, but I am so thankful and so humbled by it.
Right.
At the very least, it made me feel as though I was moving in the right direction with my vision and with my podcast, and that whatever it is that they saw in me, that I should probably continue to do.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I'm just. That's just one of those things that's just mind blowing to me, and I don't think I'll ever be able to give you a real good answer on that one.
Fair enough. I just know I was going crazy for you. I was like, "Yo, I know her," because like you was up there with like some heavy hitters,
yes,
like and stuff like that. I was like, "It's crazy."
Yes, and you know what happened this week as well, which was quite by surprise. I saw a article on LinkedIn that was, I don't even know if LinkedIn has a feed or not, but I don't know. I was just scrolling through and seeing some of the other people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. Right. And I saw an article on Rising Tide Capital, and I got so excited. Right. And I opened up the article and realized that I was featured in the article, and it's on blackenterprise.com. And
absolutely.
I was like, what?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about that as well, but you
okay, let me go. You want me to go back? Because
no, you're good. You're good. Go for it.
But that was, I'm still scratching my head on that one. I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me right now? Like, I had no idea that was out there, and that was for, and I was being featured because of the candle company. So I don't even know what to say. I really don't know what to say. I am so, I guess, speechless with it all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's where I am.
I get that, but I think, also, if I could help out, if I may, I think it also lets you know, just like you said, it reminds you that you're on the right path. And I think those affirmations and reaffirmations, no matter what you're doing are awesome, are always things that you're looking for and that you appreciate. So I can definitely understand that for sure. I can definitely understand that. So let me ask you this, because I know you actually do work at Rising Tide, correct?
Right. So I am a small business instructor. So I started off as a student in 2014, and then I got an opportunity to become an instructor for Rising Tide. Yes.
Awesome stuff. And so just kind of share with us a little bit about the work that you do there at Rising Tide.
All right. So Rising Tide is an amazing community entity. It is birthed in Jersey City, New Jersey, and the program serves underserved areas for adults who are interested in starting and growing businesses, opportunities that they would not have normally been able to have had Rising Tide not existed. So it is, they offer quite a few programs within Rising Tide Capital, but one of them being the Community Business Academy, which I am an instructor for. Gotcha. And with the Community Business Academy, it's a 12-week program that gives people who have a business idea. You don't have to be in business. Gotcha. You can have a business idea. You can have a small business that you're running already and need a little bit of help with, or if you just want to kind of refresh yourself and get more information and more access to things, Rising Tide is a beautiful thing for small businesses. So the 12-week program gives you the basics of everything that you would need to know from A to Z in building and starting your own business. And then after that, the beautiful thing about Rising Tide is that the Community Business Academy is kind of like the cake, but the icing on the cake are all of the other things that are offered to you after you've actually graduated. So, and that could be in the form of the help desk at a very, very low cost, where you can get services like websites and logos and things of that nature. It runs the gamut. There are so many amazing people that are on the help desk that help us as entrepreneurs within Rising Tide. And then there's also an opportunity for you to have small business coaching. And you are getting coached by major people within the industry that
Right.
it's just incredible. And we're paying $10 an hour to have a small business coach to pretty much take us by the hand and help us through the process of really building and sustaining our businesses, which is most important. Because you can go to a program, they'll tell you what you need to do to build this business or to start this business, but who's helping you to sustain it? So they hold your hand the entire way and they don't let it go. And it's something that it is the most incredible program, and it's actually expanding now. I think they're in Jersey. I believe they've expanded to Chicago, Charlotte, North Carolina, and I believe in Charleston, South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So, anybody out there who's looking for a program like that, just contact Rising Tide, because they're open to expanding across the country for whoever needs them. They'll be there.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that Rising Tides also allows people to apply for grants. And I actually have in doing the show prep to talk to you today, Kim, I knew the name Rising Tide sounded familiar, but in my show prep, I figured out why. So Rising Tide actually provided a grant to a nonprofit here in Memphis called Let's Innovate Through Education, or Life, if you will. And so I actually coach, mentor young entrepreneurs that are in high school for the past 3 years. And so we're actually a beneficiary of a Rising Tide grant.
Nice.
We actually had one of the representatives come down to Memphis. We took her around, get some barbecue and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, Kim, thank you and all the people there at Rising Tide for the amazing work that you do. Just know that what you do matters, and what you do is definitely changing some lives around here, especially here in Memphis. So,
well, that is so nice that Rising Tide has come your way. It's Alex Forrester and Alpha Demalash. They are the most amazing two human beings on the planet for what they've started, and they've also, with Rising Tide too, another part that is very, very popular with Rising Tide as well, and what they offer is they have a pitch competition, and they are giving away a lot of money, making a lot of small businesses very happy people, giving them an opportunity to create their pitches, to learn and get coaching, and also win money as well. And I was able to participate in that back in 2014, and I won $7,500, in grant money for Wax Kandy. So Rising Tide all around. But that is amazing that it has come that far, and that there is. You see how there's a connection everywhere?
Absolutely.
There's a connection everywhere. That's something else.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And so in that same vein, let me ask you this, Kim, who are your mentors?
I have a mentor, Elsie Escobar is one of my mentors. She's actually my mentor in podcasting.
Okay.
She is, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you about Elsie. Elsie is, yeah.
Awesome, huh?
Yes, that much so. She's with, she podcasts, and she is an incredible, amazing, human being, and is so true to podcasting. She's so true to what she does with podcasting. And let me see who else. Dawn Fitch is a small business owner. She's actually one of the business owners that I am collaborating with on a specific event, and then also that I'm sharing the space with in Kearney, New Jersey. Dawn Fitch is the owner of Puka Pure and Simple, and I admire her so much. And she is such an incredible, amazing, generous woman, and I've learned so much from her.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you this really quickly, because I believe all entrepreneurs have a superpower. What's yours and why?
Oh, let's see. What is my superpower? My superpower is, oh my goodness, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
You got me on that one. My superpower, I think my creativity
I hear that.
is my superpower. I have notebooks where I have to jot down ideas constantly because ideas flow in me all day, every day. And I sleep with a notebook and a pen next to my bed. And I think what stems from my creativity are all the things that have come to fruition for me and all the great things that have happened. And it's endless. Like I'm creative with my hands. I'm creative with writing. I'm creative with, I think with the podcast, it just is a endless stream of things for me. So I think my creativity has carried me a long way, and I'm thankful for it. I'd rather be a very creative person than an analytical person. And I know that
Okay.
might sound a little nutsy, but
No, not at all. Not at all.
I enjoy that part of myself. Watching something, thinking of something, and creating it with either my mind or with my hands, and then seeing the finished product. I love
Right.
that.
I hear that. I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And so before I ask the last question, Kimberly, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the Startup Life podcast, powered by the Binge Podcast Network. You gave amazing value from, talking about your podcast to Wax Candle and everything, Wax Kandy Candle Company. Sorry, just to make sure I get that right. The link to the website is in the show notes for easy access. Also for Sistahs Connect podcast, the link is there in the show notes as well. You gave amazing value all the way around. So I want to actually turn the microphone over to you because, look, there's somebody out there who's afraid to start their company or afraid to start their journey on whatever it is that, has been called for them to do, but they're afraid to do it, or they're just doing it, but they feel a little stuck. Give them some words of motivation and tell them to keep moving forward.
I would say that everything that you think about, everything that is planted inside of you, I would document it, put it down on paper, and make yourself look at that each day. And then on the other hand, you have both of your hands out. You do that. On the other side, look at where you are in life right now. Are you happy? Do you feel fulfilled with where you are? And if you feel that you're not, and there's something that's really deeply planted inside of you that you need to fulfill, then you have to fulfill it. There's no waiting. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just know that there's a purpose. There's a reason why you have that feeling, and take the steps to do it. And one of those things that I would suggest is find people who are doing what you'd like to do. Get yourself connected with communities, whether that's in social media or meetup groups or even a podcast that talks about or is really connected to what it is that you would like to do. Start learning as much as you can about that industry, about that thing. And don't be afraid to do it. That's the only thing that I could say is just don't be afraid. Take little steps at a time if you have to, but make a plan and take steps. It doesn't have to be a big jump in the pool kind of thing. Just find out what you can do each day that's going to move you closer and closer and closer toward that goal. And remember, the biggest thing is this, is if you are not feeling fulfilled with where you are and you feel that what that dream is will make you feel more fulfilled, is truly your passion and your calling, then that's where you need to be walking toward.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life. Kimberly, did you enjoy being on the show?
I did. And I'm telling all my friends about you, Dominic, all of them.
I appreciate that. All right, Startup Nation. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new Startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.